You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. On today's episode, we're reviewing the second semi-final of this ICC Champions Trophy for 2025 between South Africa and New Zealand. This semi-final between South Africa and New Zealand was a rematch of the 2015 World Cup semi-final. For South Africa, their semi-final hoodoo continues yet again, losing another semi-final. They weren't up to the mark in this match against New Zealand. For New Zealand, they have reached another final of an ICC tournament. They bounced back well after the group match defeat to India. They batted and bowled better than South Africa in the second semi-final of this Champions Trophy. And they certainly did. It was a very all-round team performance by New Zealand. They batted well, bowled well. I think the scoreboard pressure of posting a very big score of over 360 was pretty much the key for New Zealand in terms of them winning this game. South Africa, on the other hand, yet again, another semi-final hoodoo that they failed once again in a semi-final. South Africa, if we look back on the last three ICC tournaments, so we go back to the World Cup in 2023 in India, made it to the semi-final, lost to Australia. The T20 World Cup last year in the Caribbean, USA, they made it to the semi-finals and then obviously went on to play India in the final. And then this Champions Trophy, semi-final, and then got beaten by New Zealand. So they've made three semi-finals in a row in three ICC tournaments, South Africa. So they're doing well to get to the business end of tournaments. But as we know with South Africa, the stigma and the tag that they've had for years in terms of choking has come back to bite them again. Unfortunately, probably saved their bad game, their worst game of this tournament in this Champions Trophy, I'm afraid. So really, in the end, it was pretty much a one-sided affair, really, in this semi-final. And that was probably the same in the first semi-final of this Champions Trophy with India and Australia. Pretty much one-sided until the end of the game. So that was the same here with South Africa and New Zealand. So plenty to talk about and discuss from this second semi-final of this Champions Trophy between South Africa and New Zealand. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. And first of all, we'll have a look back at how the game panned out in terms of the match summary. New Zealand batted first and made 6 for 362 from their 50 overs. Rachin Ravindra top scored with 108, and Ngidi took 3 wickets for South Africa there with the ball. South Africa needed 363 to win. They finished on 9 for 312 from their 50 overs. David Miller top scored with 100 not out. And Mitchell Satner took 3 wickets for New Zealand with the ball there. So a very good captain's performance there from Mitchell Satner. New Zealand won by 50 runs, and Rachin Ravindra was named the player of the match for his 108. So that's pretty much how the semi-final panned out here at the Gaddafi Stadium for this Champions Trophy. And New Zealand pretty much putting on the runs on this very flat surface, and South Africa succumbing to the scoreboard pressure in the run chase. Now, what were some of the key moments and key factors in the second semi-final between South Africa and New Zealand of this Champions Trophy that really decided this game in favour of New Zealand? Well, there was a pivotal moment in this game, the partnership between Rachin Ravindra and Kane Williamson. That was very important for New Zealand. 164 they put on for the second wicket. It was very important for them to really set the foundation and platform for New Zealand to really post this score of 362. That partnership was very crucial in terms of New Zealand getting to 362, which was a very good score in the end because South Africa couldn't chase it down because of the scoreboard pressure. And also another key moment was South Africa dropping catches. That was very telling in this game. Heinrich Klaassen dropped both Ravindra on 87 off the bowling of Maharaj, and then he dropped Kane Williamson on 57 off the bowling of Ngidi. So 2 drop catches there between Ravindra and Williamson off Heinrich Klaassen. was a key moment as well in this semi-final for South Africa in terms of them not capitalizing on opportunities. And that partnership between Ravinda and Williamson was able to get to 164, which I do believe is probably the highest partnership of this Champions Trophy thus far. Both of them scored hundreds, and obviously New Zealand were able to pile on the runs. So that was another key moment as well that really turned the game in New Zealand's favour and really took the game away from South Africa. Now, let's talk about South Africa and reflect on their performance in this second semi-final of this Champions Trophy against New Zealand. And for South Africa, yet again, another semi-final defeat. It was their fifth semi-final appearance at the Champions Trophy, South Africa. They have won the Champions Trophy before, and that was back in 1998, which was the first ever Champions Trophy back in 1998. So they've been to the semi-finals on 5 occasions. This was the 5th occasion against New Zealand in 2025. And yet again, they lost another semi-final, which continues to linger over South Africa in terms of the hoodoo, in terms of them choking, the choking tag, as we always say. Yet again, it happened again. And quite simply, with the batting side of things, they were chasing 362. And that was always going to be a difficult chase, even on a flat pitch here in Lahore. Now, South Africa, by all possibilities, could have chased it down. They would have taken some great belief and self-belief when they saw Australia chase down 350 against England, which was here in Lahore. So I think South Africa would have looked at that innings from Australia and said, right, okay, they chased down 350. We're chasing 362. Which is going to be a bit difficult than 350, but it's still possible given that the surface here in Lahore was very flat. The dew comes in, the ball skids on, it's easy for batting. That didn't quite happen for South Africa. Early on, they did well to maintain the required run rate. The partnership between Bavuma and van der Dussen, 105 for the second wicket, pretty much did that in terms of maintaining the run rate. Both of them scored 50s, but then both of them got out. Bavuma for 56, van der Dussen for 69. And that was the telling moment in the South African innings. And that's where they went downhill. They lost wickets frequently. The required run rate went up and up and up because of the loss of wickets. And it really stemmed the momentum and the flow and the fluency and the rhythm of the innings from South Africa. When you're chasing big totals and big targets, you need probably 1 or 2 batters to score hundreds, and you probably need 1 or 2 big partnerships to get the job done. And it was always going to be difficult for South Africa. In the end, the scoreboard pressure was their undoing. And I think that's why New Zealand wanted to bat first, because of that reason, because they knew it's a flat pitch. If we can pile on the runs, which they did, 362 of them, we can put South Africa under pressure in the run chase with the scoreboard. And that's what happened. And South Africa lost wickets. Probably some of them will be disappointed with the way they got out. There were some ordinary dismissals. And, you know, probably Bavuma and van der Dussen will be disappointed to get out the way they did. Both of them were set. Both of them scored half centuries. And probably that partnership was going to replicate the partnership that Rachin Ravindra and Kane Williamson had in the first innings when New Zealand batted first. You know, Bavuma and van der Dussen were probably going to do that. They looked pretty comfortable up until they got out. So the scoreboard pressure, probably batters making mistakes on a flat pitch, you know, the required run rates, all these factors. When you're chasing a big score like 362, you need a lot of things to go your way. And as I mentioned, you probably need 2 batters to score big hundreds. You probably need 1 or 2 big partnerships, and then you need to take it deep. In the end, South Africa finished on 9 for 312. So they did well to get over 300. At one stage, there were 9 down for 256. So it didn't look like they were going to get to 300. But David Miller batted really well with Ngidi for the 10th wicket partnership. Both of them added 56 unbeaten for the 10th wicket partnership. And David Miller batted well. He scored 100, not out. So a bit of a red inker there for David Miller. A bit of a bitter feeling, I suppose. Obviously, it's great scoring 100, but in a losing cause, because really when Miller was joined by Ngidi, pretty much the game was done at 9 for 256 when Rabada got out and Ngidi joined Miller. Pretty much the game was pretty much done and dusted. So David Miller was just having some fun at the end there. So that's pretty much what happened with the batting side of things for South Africa, is that the scoreboard pressure was a big factor, really. And they lost wickets and they lost momentum. So that's why they didn't chase down 362. In terms of the bowling side of things, probably the bowlers didn't have their greatest day with the ball. Janssen was disappointing, none for 79. Maharaj, none for 65. I suppose 2 wickets for Rabada, 3 for Ngidi, a wicket for Mulder, and Ada Markram bowled his part-time off-spin. So I think the South African bowling was pretty poor in this game. Obviously, it was a flat pitch. They went for runs. But really, South Africa didn't really execute with their plans with the ball, especially towards the back end of the New Zealand innings. They looked a little bit ragged when Glenn Phillips was going off, and he was smashing the ball to all parts of the ground here in Lahore. The South African bowlers didn't get it right at the death, didn't execute their skills. But also the drop catches. South Africa dropped 3 catches in this innings. Heinrich Klaasen dropped 2 of them. As we mentioned earlier, he dropped Rachin Ravinder Klaasen on 87. That was off the bowling of Maharaj. And then Klaasen dropped Williamson for 57. And that was off the bowling of Ngidi. And then Mulder dropped Daryl Mitchell on 43. And that was off the bowling, again, off the bowling of Ngidi. So the drop catches and the poor bowling cost South Africa, really. You can't afford to drop catches in a semi-final. You got to take your chances, especially on a flat surface like this in Lahore. You got to take every chance. If they got Ravinder and Williamson out, if Klaasen held on to those catches, it could have been a different result. Maybe they were still chasing maybe something over 300, but at least it could have helped them in the long run. Unfortunately, that wasn't to be. So South Africa had an off day with the ball. The fielding side of things, they're usually a good fielding side, South Africa, but they dropped a few catches, which they should have taken. Unfortunately, that was their undoing in the end. So that's pretty much the bowling performance. It wasn't their greatest day with the ball. As a team performance, pretty disappointing, to reach the semi-finals. And unfortunately, there's got to be a winner and a loser. And unfortunately, again, for South Africa, everyone will say the choking tag, it will continue until they win a semi-final, until they win a final of an ICC tournament. Then the choking tag will finally be shaken off. But unfortunately, at the moment, it's not quite the case. So South Africa, they will be disappointed with the performance, no doubt, in this semi-final against New Zealand. Let's talk about New Zealand and talk about their performance in this second semi-final against South Africa for this Champions Trophy. And it was a very good team performance by South Africa. They batted and bowled well, and they were able to get the job done and claim victory and go through to their 3rd Champions Trophy final, which will be against India on Sunday, which is going to be a very mouth-watering contest, no doubt. But for New Zealand, really, the game was set up really with the way they batted in terms of their batting prowess and being able to score a big score. 362 for 6 in their 50 overs was a very dominant score. And I think the reasoning behind batting first was to put scoreboard pressure on, especially on a flat pitch here in Lahore. If you bat first, get a big score on the board, even though it's a flat surface, it's always going to be difficult for the chasing side. In this case, South Africa, to chase down 362 was always going to be an ask. And that's why they batted first, New Zealand, to put the pressure on. Some very good partnerships for New Zealand contributed to them getting this big score. And really the innings was set up by Rachin Ravinder and Kane Williamson. It was a very good partnership, 164 for the second wicket, which was the highest partnership of this Champions Trophy thus far. And that partnership really set up the innings for New Zealand to post this big score of 362. It allowed Daryl Mitchell and especially Glenn Phillips towards the end, who blasted 49 not out. And he was able to, get that big score and really put, South Africa under pressure towards the back end of the innings. And that's what they did, really. And they did it quite well. And they were able to do that and get the job done in the end. So for New Zealand, 362 was always going to be a very commanding total. So the batting side of things, they executed very well, New Zealand, as we've just mentioned. Good innings from Ravinder and Williamson, both of them scoring hundreds. 108 for Ravinder, 102 for Williamson. A very good 49 from Mitchell and a 49 from Phillips contributed to that effort. So the batting side of things was good. Also, Rachin Ravinder, Kane Williamson had some chances. Both of them were dropped. Ravinder was dropped on 87 by Klaasen off the bowling of Maharaj. And then Klaasen dropped Kane Williamson on 57 off Nengiri. So both of them had a bit of luck, which you need in cricket. You need a bit of luck to be able to, really capitalize on your innings. And as a batter, you need a bit of luck in terms of fielders dropping catches and that and getting second chances. And that's what Williamson and Rachin had in this innings. So the batting side of things was very good for New Zealand. The bowling side of things, even better. 362 scoreboard pressure. And if you're on a flat surface and you bat first and you post a big score like New Zealand did, 362, the bowlers are going to have that scoreboard pressure as their friend and the advantage that New Zealand had. So they needed South Africa and their batters to make mistakes and get themselves out and have a bit of the scoreboard pressure mount on them as well. And that's what happened. Everyone contributed. A couple of wickets for Henry and Phillips, a wicket each for Bracewell and Ravinder, 3 wickets for Satner, a good captain's bowling performance there from Satner, 3 wickets. And pretty much South Africa crumbled because of the scoreboard pressure, because of the loss of wickets. New Zealand were able to build the pressure on them and were able to capitalize really with dot balls and wickets, and the required run rate just ballooned up until the game was out of reach for South Africa. So it was a very good bowling performance on a very flat pitch from the New Zealand bowlers. They probably executed a bit better than the South African bowlers, it had to be said. But a very good bowling performance nonetheless from New Zealand. So they should be proud of their efforts there, especially on a flat surface where the ball's not doing much. But scoreboard pressure, the advantage of having a big score on the board, batting first, definitely helps the bowling side when they bowl second to put pressure on the opposition. And that's what New Zealand did in this second semi-final against South Africa. And that's why they won the game. And that's why they're through to the final on Sunday to play India. So a very good team performance from New Zealand, very solid with the bat, and a very good bowling performance on a very flat surface in Lahore. For South Africa, the one bad game they had this tournament had to be the semi-final. Quite simply, they were outplayed by a better New Zealand team, but they should be proud of how they played in this Champions Trophy. For New Zealand, they will now face India in the final on Sunday. They will hope that the win over South Africa will serve them well in the final. Before the tournament started, everyone had them in the final. They have a very good chance of claiming their second Champions Trophy title come Sunday in the final, and for the first time since they won the Champions Trophy back in 2000. Thanks everyone for listening to our review of the second semi-final of this ICC Champions Trophy for 2025 between South Africa and New Zealand. If you're watching or listening to this episode of the podcast on our YouTube channel, let us know your thoughts on this second semi-final of this ICC Champions Trophy for 2025 between South Africa and New Zealand in the comments. We would love to hear what you have to say. Thanks for watching and listening. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.